Hi everyone and welcome to finally new episode of podcast. Today I don't have any host with me, so this is not an interview. But anyway, I hope you're doing well today, or at least surviving in this chaotic digital world we all live in. I feel like I've got really consumed with my stuff, and not that I forgot about this podcast, but I've just spent so much time doing so many other things. And I decided that today's episode is going to be a little different, maybe even a bit more raw and reflective, because I want to talk about something I've been thinking about for a long time. And it's also something that is really close to my heart. It's something that I've seen play out again and again while running an artist HQ, watching fandoms evolve and just being online. I wrote a Substack about it as well. It's the topic of how fandom culture shifts slowly and quietly from idolizing artists to idolizing other fans, and how that dynamic can really rob the entire experience of what it means to love something, to be a part of a community, and to share passion with others. So sit comfortably, grab a drink. I will try to explain it in a few ways on how I view it, maybe get even a little deeper. If you want to read my Substack, you can. It's link in my Instagram bio, my personal bio, so definitely check it out if you are interested in that. That's also another reason why I decided to make a podcast episode as well, because I just got so many kind messages about it, and people have been sharing it and saying that it is really an important topic for them as well. So yeah, let's talk about it. So at first, let's start with the obvious, the thing most people don't really question until it's too late. Most of us join fandoms because we love something, a band that soundtracked our coming of age, a TV show that made us feel seen for the first time, a writer who put our feelings into words we couldn't find ourselves, an actor who brought a character to life in a way that stuck with us, a game that pulled us into a world that felt more real than real life, and of course, singers. And I feel like something about that art, the performance, that story, it all hit us where it mattered. It made us feel alive or inspired or understood. And that feeling, that spark, is what draws us. It's what makes us seek out other people who felt the same lighting bolt in their chest. That's the root of the fandom, the community built on shared passion, a love letter to something bigger than ourselves. In the beginning, it's pure. You post about a lyric that made you cry, you make a silly meme about your favorite character, you stay up way too late on a Tuesday night live tweeting a show or watching a performance for the 100th time just because it makes you happy. You're not doing it for likes or followers or social currency. You're doing it because you care, because it means something to you. But then something shifts. And it doesn't happen all at once. It's subtle, quiet, so quiet you don't even notice it until you're deep in it. One day it's not just about the singer anymore. It's about which fans the singer follows. It's about who got reposted on Instagram, who was at the front of the barricade, who has the rare merch, who was in the same city when the artist tweeted. Suddenly you're not just watching the artist anymore. You're watching the people around them. Fandom starts to develop its own inner circles, its own social rankings, not based on how much you love the art, but how close you appear to be to the artist. It becomes a game of proximity, not actual closeness, because let's be honest, most of us will never truly know the artist, but the appearances of closeness. That's where the power is, or at least where people think it is. And when you can get to the artist directly, which, let's face it, most fans can't, the next best thing becomes getting close to someone who seems close. That's when the hierarchy starts to build. That's when the energy starts to shift. People start to follow certain fans not because of what they're saying, but because of who follows them, who they interact with, who they know. People start aligning themselves with popular accounts. Group chats form not around shared interest, but around perceived status. It becomes less about the actual art and more about people playing the social game. Being seen with the right people, saying the right things, posting the right kind of content. And that change, it's not just cosmetic, it fundamentally alters the way people move through fandom spaces. The artist becomes a symbol, the art becomes background noise, and the social dynamics take center stage. It's a shift from inspiration to competition, from expression to performance, from connection to strategy. And honestly, it is exhausting because whether you realize it or not, you start to curate your entire experience around impressing other fans, not the artist. I mean, the artist as well, but not usually the artist or not yourself, but the community you've been convinced you have to impress in order to matter. And look, I am not saying this happens everywhere or to everyone. There are still people engaging with pure love and joy. But once you see the shift, once you really, really see it, you start to notice how deeply rooted it is in fandom culture, especially online. It's the quiet way we all start performing. The way we change our tone depending on who's watching, the way certain people's opinions suddenly carry more weight than others, not because they're more thoughtful or informed, but because they have, 20,000 followers, or the artist like their post once or even follows them. It's no longer just about loving something. It's about being seen loving it the right way by the right people in the right circles. And that's when the center of fandom, the art, starts to get pushed aside. So let's talk about little about the rise of the micro celebrities in fandom. That's what I like to call it, because it's one of the strangest and most revealing parts of how these social ecosystems function. I've seen it happen over and over again. Someone gets one interaction from the artist, maybe like a reply, a quick DM, repost, a follow, and overnight everything changes. They're no longer just another fan. They're elevated. They become a symbol, status marker. It's like there's this invisible crown that gets passed around, and the moment someone wears it, the energy around them shifts. People start treating them differently. They get followed more. People suddenly want to be in their replies, in their DMs, in their group chats. They want to be their friends. And it's not always about admiration, Sometimes it's about opportunity. These fans who, at the end of the day, are just people who happen to get lucky or post something at the right time, become proxies for the artist. If people can reach the celebrity, then the next best thing is being close to someone who has, or seems like they have. It's this strange hunger for proximity, not a real connection, not a conversation, but the image of closeness. Because in the digital age, perception is power. And if you're perceived to be close to the source, the artist, the band, actor, then suddenly you're not just another fan anymore. You're valuable. And nowhere is this more obvious than on Stan Twitter, let's be honest. Certain accounts become recognizable, not because they've done anything groundbreaking, but because they've been noticed. Maybe they posted a thread that went viral. Maybe their fan cam hit 1 million views. Maybe they had the right mutuals. Whatever the reason, people start treating them like influencers or like celebrities, like they're important in the ecosystem that we're creating right now. And it's wild because their actual content often becomes secondary. It's not about what they're posting anymore, it's about who they are, or more accurately, what they represent. They become a shortcut to visibility, a stepping stone, social opportunity, and the fandom starts orbiting around them instead of the artist the fandom is supposed to be about. I've seen people wedge themselves into friendships and mutual circles purely because someone got a follow, a reply, or a backstage photo, or they met the artist, someone around in the coffee shop or something. And often it's subtle. They won't come out and say, I want to be close to you because you're close to the artist, but you can feel it. The shift in tone, the sudden friendliness, the strategic compliments, the passive-aggressive competition disguised as support. And then when someone shinier comes along, someone with a fresher interaction, or more clout or a newer viral moment, they're gone. No hesitation, no loyalty. The dynamic just resets. The attention moves to the next queen, diva fan like clockwork. And the cycle starts all over again. It's transactional. It's performative. And honestly, it's kind of depressing because at the heart of it, we're talking about people, real people, being treated like stepping stones, like networking opportunities instead of actual human beings. And this dynamic creates a strange pressure for the people who get elevated too, because now they're no longer allowed to be casual fans. Now they have a following, a reputation. People project things onto them, expect things from them, and suddenly every tweet matters. Every silence matters. Every interaction gets analyzed, and it is exhausting. What started as a fan account becomes a performance, a role, a version of themselves they're expected to maintain. And if they ever try to step back or say no or set a boundary, they risk losing all those friendship in quotations that were never really friendships to begin with. That's the dark side of this ecosystem. It turns fans into symbols and people into commodities. The art fades into the background, and what takes center stage is the constant, unspoken game of status and positioning. And again, I want to be clear. Not every corner of fandom looks like this. There are still people who genuinely connect, I'm not saying that, who care about the art, who build lasting friendships rooted in love, not leverage. But this pattern, this tendency to treat certain fans like celebrities because of their perceived access, it's become more common than anyone wants to admit. And when that becomes the norm, it poisons the space. It turns something that should be joyful into something tense, competitive, and deeply alienating. And we'll talk about it more later. Here's the thing that doesn't get talked about enough. This behavior, this constant idolization of fans, the obsession with perceived closeness, the silent games of status and relevance, it doesn't just hurt the people chasing the top. It hurts the people who are already there too, which I already little mentioned before. The people with big followings. And I'm not saying there are people who genuinely enjoy this and use this for, their own satisfaction or because they genuinely think that they're influencers. But the ones with the big following or the known fan accounts, the people everyone else is quietly orbiting around. Sometimes they might even seem like they have it all, the visibility, mutuals, attention. But what a lot of people don't see is the weight of all of that. And that's what I want to talk about a little, because I feel like everyone kind of speaks about them in a negative way. But I think we should look about how they perceive it as well. And I've seen these fan account owners burn out. I've been friends with one of them, and she burned out like completely. Not because they suddenly stopped loving the artist, not because the music stopped mattering, but because the experience of the fandom changed for them. Because instead of being able to enjoy what they loved, they became a symbol of it, stand-in, a reference point. And that's exhausting. They're tired of being treated like a public property, tired of the constant pressure to keep performing, tired of always having to be on, always having to say the right thing, respond the right way, stay relevant. Because if they don't, they know people will disappear. And they're right, because I've seen it. I've seen people pour themselves into creating content, building spaces, hosting events, running update accounts, putting in hours of unpaid labor, only to be dropped the moment they can't keep up, the moment they need rest, the moment they set a boundary or express burnout or, God forbid, try to log out for a while. Suddenly their friendships they thought they had vanished. No check-ins. No support, just silence. And that's the thing. Those connections were never about them as a person. They were about the role they were playing, the access they represented, the content they could provide, the visibility they could give someone else just by association. It's brutal because it's isolating. You go from being loved to being forgotten, not gradually, but all at once. And it makes people question everything. Were they really even my friend? Did they ever really care about me when I wasn't producing content? Am I still valuable if I stop giving people what they want? That's the cost of being idolized in fandom spaces. You're not seen as a full human being. You're seen as a symbol. And symbols aren't allowed to be tired. They aren't allowed to make mistakes. They aren't allowed to have needs. And when they try to step out of that role, they get punished for it. Not overtly, but through silence, distance, and the slow but obvious withdrawal of support. This is why so many people, especially those who've been in fandom for years, become jaded. Because they did believe in the community. They did make genuine friendships or they did love the art with their whole heart. But when the social ecosystem twisted those things into a job, a brand, into a role they never asked for, broke the magic. It made fandom feel like work, like obligation, like performance, and it made the people around them feel less like friends and more like an audience, watching, expecting, and disappearing when the show's over. And this is how idolizing fans distorts everything. It shifts the purpose of fandom from joy to pressure, from community to currency, from passion to performance. And it doesn't just mess with the people trying to climb the ladder. It crushes the people already at the top of it too. And I feel like at this moment we have to ask ourselves, what kind of space are we building if it punishes people for needing rest? If it only values people for their productivity or their proximity to attention? What does it say about the culture we've created if the moment someone stops giving, we stop caring? Because that's not community. That's not friendship. That's not love. That's performance-based validation. And that kind of validation is hollow, temporary, unstable, it's pathetic, it doesn't nourish anyone, it just drains. In a healthy fandom space, people should be allowed to be human, to have bad days, to take breaks, to step back and still be held with care. That's what actual connection looks like. That's what sustainability looks like. And if we're not fostering that, we're not building anything real. We're just performing connection while burning people out in the process. I think one of the most quietly devastating parts of the fandom culture is the burnout after, you become irrelevant. And it's not really casual, like, I'm tired, I need break. I mean, the kind of emotional exhaustion that creeps in, slowly steals your joy and makes something you once loved feel suffocating. And it's happening to a lot of people. So many fans come into these spaces full of excitement, especially young ones, full of love. They hear a song that changes their life. They watch a show that makes them feel seen. They discover an artist who makes them feel less alone. And they want to share that because it is magical. It is magic. I've experienced that as well. And then they want to connect with other people who feel the same spark, who understand a specific kind of joy. That's what draws people in. But then, quietly, gradually, that joy gets buried under something else. Something heavier, something performative that's been, discussed before. And without even realizing it, people start curating themselves. They start adjusting how they post, how they speak, what they like, what they reblog, retweet, not based on what they genuinely enjoy, but based on what they think will be received well, what they think will align them with the right people, what they think will keep them in good standing with the fandom's unwritten social rules. And it's subtle. It might start with changing the tone of a tweet, or hesitating to share an unpopular opinion, or feeling like you can be too loud in a group chat where the big names are talking, or not posting your art or writing because someone else already did and theirs is more polished or popular. It's this quiet pressure to be palatable, to be impressive, to be strategic. And before you know it, you're not enjoying yourself anymore. You're managing yourself. And here's the heartbreaking part. A lot of people don't even notice it until it's too late. One day they just look up and realize they're not here because they love the art anymore. They're here because they feel like they have to be. Because they've built this identity, this presence, this network of mutuals. And now walking away feels like letting all of that go. Like becoming invisible. Like losing their place. They find themselves in group chats that feel more stressful than fun. They keep posting even when they're tired because they're afraid of losing momentum. They downplay the things that they really want to say because they've learned, sometimes the hard way, that being honest in fandom can come with consequences. And slowly but surely, the thing that once gave them life now drains it. That's what happens when fandoms stop being about celebration and starts being about performance. When community starts functioning like a competition. When friendship feels more like social currency than a genuine connection. People aren't just burning out because they're tired. They're burning out because they've lost the original why behind it. Because they came in looking for joy, for community, for a shared love of something meaningful, and somewhere along the line, they got pulled into a game they never actually wanted to play. And once you feel that shift, once you realize that you're not here for the artist anymore, but for survival in a social ecosystem, it becomes really hard to go back. That realization is exhausting. It makes everything feel heavier. And for a lot of people, it drives them away. They stop posting, they deactivate, they disappear. Not because they stop caring, but because it hurt too much to keep caring in a space that no longer felt safe or joyful or authentic. And the sad part, so many of those people blame themselves. They feel like they're the problem, like they just couldn't keep up, like they weren't good enough to the fandom. But that's not true. The problem isn't them, it's the culture. It's the unspoken rules, the cliques, the expectations, the way fandom can slowly stop being about this thing and starts about being the people who talk about this thing. That disconnects is what drives people out. And until we start addressing it, naming it, talking about it openly, it's going to keep happening. Because joy isn't sustainable when it's being filtered through performance. Community isn't real if it's built on conditions. And fandom isn't fun when it becomes a place where you're constantly managing your value instead of celebrating your love. At the heart of all of this, the hierarchy, the micro-celebrities, the burnout, the performance, is something much more fundamental and honestly more painful. It's the disconnection. Because when fandom stops being about shared passion and starts being about status, something important breaks. And it's not always loud or dramatic. It's quiet, slow, kind of emotional erosion. You don't always realize it's happening. You just, wake up one day and feel like a little more alone in a space that once felt like home. Because here's the thing, fandom should be about connection. That's what makes it powerful. That's what makes it meaningful. It's supposed to be this space where people come together because they love the same thing. Where joy is communal, where excitement is contagious, where someone else's post about a lyric or a moment or a scene lights something up inside you and you just get it. That's the magic of the fandom. But when the focus shifts from connection to status, that magic starts to disappear. Suddenly, it's not about joy anymore. It's about, as I said, strategy. It's about making sure you're aligned with the right people, about managing perception of you. It's about not saying the wrong thing, not associating with the wrong account, not posting the wrong kind of content. And what used to be spontaneous at first and expressive becomes calculated and cautious. You second guess everything, not because you don't love the art anymore, but because the environment around the art no longer feels safe for that love to exist unfiltered. You start to compare absolutely everything. Your numbers, your engagement, your friends, your group chats, your reach. You start wondering, why did they get noticed and I didn't? Or why is no one interacting with me anymore? And that kind of thinking, it eats away at you. It makes you question your place in a community that was supposed to be built on shared love, not social capital. The anxiety creeps in. The self-doubt, the constant awareness of who is watching, who's not, who's winning this invisible popularity contest, and who's slowly being left behind. And eventually the art, the thing that brought you here in the first place, becomes background noise. You're no longer watching the show or listening to the music just to enjoy it. You're thinking about how to post about it, how to brand it, how to make it perform. You're not laughing at moments or crying over scenes like you used to because there's no space for that kind of softness where you're just busy managing a persona you made. And that's what disconnection looks like. It's not always about logging off or burning out. Sometimes it's more subtle. It's the feeling of watching a new music video drop and realizing you're not excited anymore. It's about your app and opening it and feeling dread instead of joy. It's about being surrounded by people and still feeling invisible. Fandom stops being a place to feel more and becomes a place where you slowly feel less inspired, less valued, less like yourself. And the longer it goes on, the harder it gets to remember what brought you here to begin with. The lyrics that made you cry, the art that made you believe in something, the character that felt like a mirror, the joy of screaming about all with people who got it, not because they had clout, but because they had heart. That's the tragedy of disconnection. It doesn't always show up as drama or conflict. Sometimes it shows up as quiet resignation, as people slowly drifting away, not because they stopped caring, but because the space stopped, feeling like it could hold the kind of care they had to give. And that's why we have to name it, talk about it, call it what it is. Because when we don't, it fastens, and when we lose something that doesn't have to be lost, we lose the soul of fandom. The part that was never about hierarchy or, performance, but about belonging. But here's the part I always come back to. The part that keeps me grounded, but the rest of it starts to, feel overwhelming. It doesn't have to be this way. Seriously, this version of fandom that we've been unpacking, the hierarchy, the performative friendships, the clout chasing, the burnout, it is real, yes. It is not inevitable. It's not the only way fandom can work, and it's definitely not the version we have to settle for. Because alongside all of that toxicity and all of that pressure and posturing, there are still pockets of light. Spaces, small, quiet, powerful spaces, where people are still showing up with love. Where fans are creating just because it brings them joy. Where there's no agenda, no hidden motive, no chase for engagement. Just passion. People are still making fan art that comes from the heart, still writing fics that no one asked for, but everyone needed, let's be honest. Still making playlists, edits, memes, analyzes threads, not to impress anyone, but because it makes them feel something, because it keeps the love alive. There are still friendships being formed that aren't about mutuals or followers or likes, but about shared laughter, shared crying, shared screaming over a song or a scene or a tour announcement at 10 a.m. Friendships rooted in genuine connection, not convenience. These spaces exist, and the truth is, the more we see these toxic patterns, the more we can refuse to participate in them, the more we can opt out, the more we can actively create a different kind of fandom space, one that doesn't punish vulnerability, the one that doesn't reward manipulation, one that isn't built on conditional care. We can choose to build spaces where people feel safe, where people feel seen for who they are, know what they can provide, where boundaries are respected and you're not expected to be available 24/7 or perform joy on command, where taking breaks is okay, where showing up imperfectly is still welcome. We can build spaces where the art matters again, where the music, the stories, the performances, whatever it is, brought us here, stays at the center of the experience, where the fandom isn't about who's on top, but about what we all love, how we all love it, together. Because that's what makes fandom special. Not the numbers, not the aesthetics, not the clout, but the connection, the creativity, the community. And when we return to that, when we choose that, everything changes. We don't have to perform for each other. We can show up as ourselves. We can be weird and excited and obsessive and cringe and crazy and soft and creative and tired and still be welcome. We can engage with the art the way we did when we first found it, with open hearts and zero expectations. And that kind of space, that kind of culture, it's not impossible. Start small, in the way we treat each other, in who we uplift, in what we value, in how we respond to someone who's struggling, in whether we choose to gatekeep or open the door wider, in whether we chase status or create safety. We have more power than we think. We can change the tone of the spaces we're in. We can make them more human, more joyful, more real. So no, it doesn't have to be this way. And the more we say that out loud, the more we believe it, the more we live it, the closer we get to rebuilding fandom into something that feels good again, something that brings us back to what we came here for in the first place, the art, the joy, and the people who understand what it means to love something with your whole entire heart. So if you're listening to this and feeling jaded or burnt out or just tired, really tired, I want you to know you're not alone. You're not imagining, you're not overreacting. If fandom has started to feel heavy, overwhelming, or even painful, that feeling is valid. And it makes sense, because when something that once brought you joy starts to feel like a job you never signed up for, of course that hurts. Of course that's going to wear you down. And I want to say this clearly. It's okay to step back. It's okay to log off. It's okay to unfollow accounts that make you feel anxious or small. It's okay to leave group chats that no longer serve you. It's okay to mute or block people, to take breaks, to set boundaries, even if those things feel selfish at first. They're not. They're healthy. It's okay to rebuild your fandom experience from scratch, even if it means starting small, even if it means letting go of things you thought mattered, even if it means leaving people behind who once thought you had to impress or be close to. Because here's the truth. Your love for the art doesn't have to come with pressure. It doesn't need an audience. You don't owe anyone a performance. You can come back to the beginning, to that simple, beautiful reason you fell in love with all in the first place. The music, the stories, the characters, the creativity, the feeling in your chest when a line hits just right, the goosebumps during a live performance, the joy of screaming about something with someone who just gets it. That's the heart of fandom. That's the real part, the pure part, the part that exists whether or not you post about it, whether or not anyone sees it, whenever you're part of a popular group or have high engagement or get noticed. That joy belongs to you, and it doesn't have to be filtered through social dynamics or popularity contests. And when we let ourselves focus on that, on the art, on the joy, on the shared love that brought us here, fandom becomes beautiful again. Not perfect, but real. Messy, but meaningful. So if you're feeling disillusioned, don't give up on the entire idea of fandom just yet. Maybe just give up on the version of it that's been hurting you. There's still space for something softer, something kinder, something more true to who you are and what you are. If this episode resonated with you, if it reminded you that you're not alone in how you're feeling, feel free to share it with someone else who might need to hear it too. Because chances are someone in your orbit is feeling the exact same way and doesn't know how to put it into words yet. And one more thing, just to drive it home. You don't need clout to be valid. You don't need followers to matter. You don't need to be seen by the artist or by anyone else to be part of the community. You just need love. And maybe a little bit of courage to protect that love from everything that tries to pull you away from it. So take care of yourself. Step back when you need to. Come back when it feels right. Keep what's good. Let go of what hurts. And most of all, stay grounded in the things that bring you joy. That joy is still yours. No algorithm can take that away from you. until next time, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for listening. If you're interested in something like that again, please let me know. I love you. And keep loving what you love in your own way, on your own terms.